if you do it early and often, it does give you the ability to course correct
Yeah.
or cut ties and hopefully
Right.
avoid the pissed off review or bar complaint or whatever that might come
Yep.
if you don't do it soon enough and you wait till the end and they're like, I've been pissed this whole time.
Yeah. And we really wish we had known, right? And so, yeah, I could tilt at windmills and be aggravated that people don't tell us when there's something they don't like, or I can find out a different way to ask and use it to ask them, right? That's one of the things I think that it's understandable for lawyers to be frustrated when clients don't share that information. But the truth is that there are people who are intimidated by their lawyers, by any lawyer. They don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation. They don't feel like going through the pain of changing firms. They like someone individually and don't want to hurt their feelings. There's all sorts of stuff packed into it. So fine, let's let humans be humans and just figure out a way to ask them that people are more comfortable with.
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Founding Partner Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hawkins. This is a podcast where I get to interview law firm founders and owners and hear about their journeys and lessons learned. And you, the listener, get to hopefully learn something along the way as well. So today, I'm really excited. We've got Meghan Freed with us today. She is I'll just call her a family lawyer, divorce lawyer, whatever we call her, in Connecticut. Her firm is Freed Marcroft, and we've got a lot to cover today. So, Meghan, welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us about your firm, your background.
Oh, thanks, Jonathan. So I started out in the early part of this century as more of a traditional corporate litigator. Did well in law school and was a summer associate in one of our big firms here in Connecticut. Sort of followed that path for a while until launching the predecessor to Freed Marcroft, which was called Freed McKean. You and I both know Ryan well, my first partner, and we had more of a general civil practice firm. And then when we discovered that Ryan's interest was falling more towards the personal injury practice, and that my interest and my partner, Kristen, my current partner, Kristen Marcroft, who I'm also married to, so partnerships all around, we were more interested in family law. And so we wound up having two successful firms that were more successful than the one in their own right. And so that's how we hatched Freed Marcroft back in 2013.
Yeah, I found just through the years, it's really hard to do a personal injury contingency practice with a non-contingency practice. There are people that make it work.
Yeah,
I've seen it, but it's really hard to make that work, whether it's,
it is.
lots of reasons why, but I have just found it hard to do.
I found it hard. I found it hard to do. And I know people do it successfully, but one of the things that we actually discovered early on is if I think about 2013 and where we were gravitating, our first law firm business coach back then, who we started working with in about 2014. So like first law firm 2012, second law firm 2013, trying to just like make a go of this thing, right? And then we start working with a law firm coach. Anyway, in that first call with them, the sales call, not our first coaching call, in the first sales call, they were like, if you're going to work with us, you have to level down to one practice area. And so it really drives home the point you're making, Jonathan, where not only for us did a PI hourly firm not work, because I think that's like the first cut, right? Contingency, hourly, tricky bedfellows. I get the appeal, but then for us, we wound up quickly discovering that, like, for example, before law school, I was a financial planner and I loved doing trust and estates work. I just felt like it allowed me to like take what I used to do and level it into a legal practice. I loved it. It was like more a passion project though. And so we had to like tough love. Some of our babies had to go. And so
Yeah.
that's how we niched down into family law, which was definitely the heart of what we were both attracted to, but also being able to dial in, especially as a newer firm, into every investment we make in marketing, in training, in what Lexus or Westlaw subscription you buy. Everything was geared toward this one practice area. So very early on, we were able to go an inch wide and a mile deep, where we had been trying to go a mile wide with not, the law firm wasn't at a point where that made any sense, but it was still extremely scary to do it. But thank goodness we did.
Yeah, those are some really good points. It sounds great in theory. I mean, everybody's like, well, the contingency, we'll get the big hit every now and then, and the hourly, or it'll keep the steady cash flow. It sounds great in theory, but it is.
What paralegal
rare.
are you hiring? What skills does that person need to have?
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God. Pass.
Yeah.
I think we're at the size now where we could add a second practice area. I wouldn't go to something that had an entirely different billing model or anything like that, because I've no interest in reinventing that particular wheel. But we're probably large enough to add on another practice area, and it's just not my jam at this point. Like, let's just do the thing that we do.
I mean, there's probably still plenty of growth you can do without it. So, okay. So I do want to dive into the niche thing, but I want to go back because I was looking at your LinkedIn. And did you work in-house for a while too?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
In the middle, I skipped that. So after there's big firms, and then I was in-house, and then we started the firm.
Okay, because I'm always curious the motivations or the thought process behind some of the jumps people make. Because, I mean, I know from my own experience, I've made a number of jumps. I've done a lot of different things. And if someone asked me, I could sort of tell you. But my sense, just from my own journey and others, that there comes a time in many lawyers' careers, probably
Many is very nice.
4 to 8 years in, where you're just like, I don't want to do this at all. I don't, and then you might jump at another firm because you're like, maybe it's the firm. And then you go to the other firm, you're like, maybe it's not the firm. Maybe it's being a lawyer. So then you try something else. So I'm curious, what led you, you started out sort of, I'll call it big firm, traditional civil, and then you went in-house. What was sort of the steps along the way that drove you there?
So you remember when I said that I did well in law school and I wound up with a summer associate thing, and then the big firm thing just sort of happened? I really let that all happen to me. I had a scholarship for law school, and so it was a full ride. That's amazing. Great, right? But I had to stay in the top 10% of my class. And my section, I went part-time. My section was only 50 people. So the top 10% was a very small number, right? Oh, heavens. So I was like, I better really study hard and focus on my grades. I didn't think through why I was following the path that was available to me, other than it seemed to be what everyone was in a feeding frenzy over, so that I should want to do it. So the first thing is, it's weird that I even wound up in big firms, right? That wasn't a thoughtful decision. When I was leaving my first big firm, it was exactly what you said. I was like, this isn't feeling right. Maybe I should go to that one and make more money, right? Well, that was not better, right? The first firm had been better than the second firm. But I learned the lesson that you don't go somewhere for money if you're me, right? Like, that has to be a component of it. But that alone isn't the cure. And then after that, I loved being in-house, actually. I just had done it. Like, my in-house stint was complete. And when I got to do a lot of stuff in-house, I was at a relatively small company with a tight legal group. So I got to have a lot of freedom within that structure. And it was kind of like a very tight, close-knit law firm inside a company. And so I traveled extensively and got to sit with really experienced lawyers, and it was a really great experience. But when I looked up or over at larger companies in similar roles, that didn't look like the thing I wanted next, right? I couldn't keep doing my job forever. It had lost its shine because I had just done it. I wasn't growing enough. I was still really young. And so there I get a text message from Ryan McKean. I was sitting on a plane. I was always sitting on a plane because I was in-house, managed litigation in-house, and I just was like flying around the country, right? And so I got this text message from Ryan who was like, do you want to start a law firm? So while I just chastised myself for the first decision where I went into big law without really thinking about it, it was a text message that gave me something I never would have thought of starting my own firm. And the comfort of having the suggestion raised by someone I knew, liked, trusted, Ryan, and who had been doing a small firm state-based civil practice. I was a federal litigator prior to going in-house. It wasn't just the idea, it was like this safety net. I felt confident that the skills he had and the experience he had were some of the things I would have been most nervous about. And so that's how we started. I definitely wanted more freedom. That was the primary motivator.
So you decide to jump into private practice. How did you figure out what you were going to do? There's, like we've talked a little bit about, family law and contingency and this and that. I mean, you had the civil litigation, what was it? You were just like, I don't care. I'm just going to get in and figure it out, or we're going to do everything. What was
so
your
Ryan
thought
had a
process?
lot of background and had been at a civil litigation practice, like a more general practice prior. So that helped. That sort of set the stage. The original concept was just sort of a general civil litigation practice. That's how we started. And then the niching down really happened after that. Ryan was doing some PI at that time in that context, but a lot of it was things my work he was teaching me. I took so many CLEs. And Kristen, who at that time was with us and who had just graduated from law school rather, we were doing these things independently and together, but some of it came from my prior financial planning background where I was more comfortable in the estate planning world. So that's why I started to do some of that. But yeah, it was kind of a door law at the first. How are we going to make this thing go? And what do we want it to? We were less focused on practice area, I would say, than what we wanted to have the firm be and feel like for us and for clients.
So there's some lawyers that just sort of always knew they were going to start a firm. It sounds like that was not you.
Never, wouldn't have, nope.
But once the text came, your mind, a switch was flipped and you just jumped on. Is that accurate?
Kristen's switch was flipped. I was like, oh, it's an honor being nominated was my approach. I was like, yeah, I mean, that would be cool, but what do I know about running a law firm? We're probably not going to get any securities derivative cases in, and I don't know. That's what I know how to do, right? So Kristen was the one who challenged me and was really like, well, why not, right? This is interesting. Why wouldn't we think about this? Whereas I had summarily dismissed it at first blush.
So you've talked about this on other podcasts. Ultimately that partnership, didn't work out. You guys went your separate ways, and we can get into as much of that as you want. But I'm curious, just the experience of going into starting a firm, not really having a plan. Really, it sounds like you're like, we're just going to do it. We're just going to figure it
out. We had plans. We spent a lot of time on a lot of plans, but one of them wasn't what's our like preferred practice area. Yeah.
So with the benefit of hindsight, if there's somebody out there that's sort of maybe I want to do something, any thoughts on jumping into a firm with the attitude of we'll just do whatever comes in versus, all right, let's figure out what we're going to focus on?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So now with what we've learned, this is in the category of do as I say, not as I do, right? We would have hired the coach first and figured out an actual business plan and gone forward that way. Not that it wouldn't have changed, not that we wouldn't have gotten things totally wrong. That's part of the gig, right? It's not going to be perfect, but we would have changed the order and I think would have started in a niche rather than corrected into a niche. That's if I were going to start, if Freed Marcroft disappeared and we were going to start a new firm, we would not ever do the general practice step.
Yeah. Okay. So here's another one. So again, so the partnership didn't work out. As you look back on it, any lessons there that maybe, I don't know how to put it, warning signs? I mean, people come to me all the time and they're like, we want to do a partnership. And I usually I have a list of questions that have nothing to do with law, nothing to do with business. It's sort of touchy-feely kind of stuff. Even if you go through those, it doesn't mean you're going to be successful. But I'm just curious, as people are out there thinking, should I go in with a partner? Who should I get as a partner? What are some of the things maybe they should be looking out for?
I think that neither Kristen nor I knew what we were actually interested in practicing when we started because we didn't have the requisite experience to know what was going to ring our bells. So in that way, there's kind of, with Freed McKean, our firm with Ryan, people gravitating towards different practice areas wasn't necessarily foreseeable. So it's just sort of like that's one of the things that happens. But I think that if you are in a position where you do know what practice areas you're interested in, you've kind of cleared one of the hurdles that we didn't clear. And then I think it becomes about, what do you want this to look like? What do you want your life to look like, right? How often do you want to be on vacation? Do you plan on working remotely, or is this going to be an in the office thing? If there's a decision, and I'm much more interested in what you have to say about this, what I have to say about this, but the decision between let's take a classic structure and it's just like two partners starting a firm. What does 50-50 mean? Would 51-49 be better? How are we gonna resolve things like this? How much money are we willing to invest and in what, especially in the really early stages? Like, how much do we need to get out versus what we put in? How can we all feel good about everyone's contributions in terms of hours billed or work generated? And I think that there are a lot of law firms that I am generally knowledgeable about, generally passingly knowledgeable about, where they're not really a firm. It's just a sharing of expenses and things like that. And I think if you want to do that, that's fine. It will limit your growth. But if you want to start that way, I get it. Pre-decide who gets stuck with the beeping copy release, but but that's a fine way to start. But if you're going into a more collaborative model where one person may be more responsible for generating work and another person may be more responsible for doing it, you have to make sure that everyone is making a profit on how they value their own and each other's efforts, and how everyone knows that they're doing a good job. I think it's those kind of questions and discussions that can really be important to figure out if it's a right fit. Because, in retrospect, Ryan and I are now close friends. We weren't always, right? It was not like, I'm a divorce lawyer. It wasn't the most fun I've ever had to go through a partnership breakup. I'm not proud of everything I did in it. I'm proud of how we are now. And I'm not sure anyone is rooting for him more than I am, right? So isn't that a wonderful outcome? That doesn't mean there isn't anything to learn about how we did it, how we could have done it better. Don't make the same mistakes that I made. Take them for what they're worth and make your own mistakes that are smaller.
A lot of wisdom in all of that. A lot of wisdom there. And I have found, I do a lot of law firm breakups too, and it's even the cases that objectively from the outside, there's like nothing to fight about. There's
Nope.
there's nothing to fight about. It's still hard and still emotional, and it's something that you wouldn't even expect. Like I've had some where the person is retiring from the practice of law to do something completely. They're not even competing. They're doing nothing.
Yes,
but
we're
the
out,
other person
right?
just feels abandoned. It's just,
We were
it's,
doing this together, right?
yeah,
And I wouldn't have gone in with someone. This wasn't my experience, but I can think, I can see someone feeling like, but we just talked about this 5 years ago. Where are you going? Right.
exactly.
Now all of a sudden you want to be a yoga instructor. Right.
It's not you, it's me.
Right. I mean, right. Relationships are relationships are relationships, whether it's a
Yeah.
marriage or a partnership or, my intense relationship with my Cavalier King Charles Spaniels. They're all give and take.
Well, dogs are special. They're
Yeah.
completely special. But
There.
okay, so let's go back to sort of the niche. So, you're family law now, and you've sort of got a niche within the niche, or niche within the niche is.
Yeah.
I'm from the South. I can call it a niche, but
Yeah. You can call it whatever you want with your great accent.
so what led you? Why family law? I mean, you had no experience in it.
Yeah.
What led you to that, and what drew you to that?
So Ryan had done divorce, so we had bandwidth in Freed McKean. My first client that got referred to me was my first divorce client that got referred to me was from a wonderful, very senior lawyer at a big firm in Connecticut. And it was a connection from his work for a corporation, and she was getting divorced. It was I now know, like extremely straightforward divorce. Well, I didn't treat it like a straightforward divorce. I was very thorough, but I loved it. I loved helping her choose to move from an unhappy situation to a happy situation. And I think part of what resonated with me is, and I don't like to a big law is great for a lot of people. There's nothing wrong with it. But one of the reasons that I think ultimately I wasn't a fit, although I wouldn't have said it when I was there, is I really love the nuts and bolts of the legal practice of law. That rings my bells. It had never occurred to me that I was actually, and I am about to say this, right? I was not actually interested in emotions associated with clients, I thought. Well, it turns out that I was so used to huge dollar amounts with a balance sheet P&L impact that I didn't realize what it was like when you truly helped a individual impact their life. And it was like, oh my God, I'm helping this person lead the life that they want to lead. I'm not doing it for them. They're doing it for themselves, but it's better with me there. Let's do that all day, every day.
That reminds me, I saw one of your LinkedIn posts. It was about being a counselor versus being an advocate. And
yeah, that one had a pretty hot bench.
That was, but that sort of fits in, I think, to what you're talking about here. But maybe elaborate on that. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so that I remember an old shingle for a law firm used to say attorney at counsel and counselor at law. That's what you would put on your sign in the center of your quaint little town. And I think people, especially newer lawyers, in trying to do a really great job, really get focused on a narrow definition of zealous advocacy and forget the counselor component. And I'm not talking about get on the couch, right? Tell me your problems. I'm not talking about stepping into the role of an actual mental health professional. I'm talking about counseling people on their legal options, counseling people on what's realizable legally. And I think that piece for me is really tricky to master, still working on it over here. But how do we give our individual clients or our business clients the information they need to make the best possible decisions for their goals rooted in what is possible? And the more you let that be the lead, and then the zealous advocacy that you think of, like, you know, in court, at the negotiation table, that comes second. That's the second part of your job. But I also think that doing the counseling, being a counselor to your client, is part of being a zealous advocate. And I know it's hard to teach to newer lawyers because they haven't had a lot of clients yet, right? And they have some understandable and appropriate nervousness around their hard skills, right? But the faster we can get to the soft skills, the hard skills are the easy stuff.
So true. I remember as a young lawyer, you get so bogged down in fighting every little fight, and maybe you're like, I'm going to win this one. Maybe you will. Maybe you're 100% right. But then you're sort of like, why did we spend all this time? It didn't matter. It just didn't matter to the bigger.
Like, if we have, I love page limits in litigation, right? Page limits, I think, are such a gift especially to the newer lawyer. It's like, you have 5 arguments. Which are the best ones? And let's allocate time that way. Let's allocate words that way. Let's allocate time that way. And I think I think back on being at big law firms earlier in my career. So like, you're a very, very new lawyer in a very big environment. And the number of hours I spent looking for a case that didn't exist on what I now know was like for a footnote. And
it was that case brief, that the partner was sure existed. I remember
or
reading
was
that
afraid
case.
Was, right? But remember that? We were like, how long do I go to prove the negative, right? I don't miss that. That's hard. Newer lawyers, that's just hard. Yeah. Your job is hard.
Yeah. So we sort of figured out how you got into your niche, but then within that, you've sort of got, I call it a sub niche or maybe a super niche, whatever you want to call it. So I don't know if it's a primary focus, but you have a big focus on the LGBT community. How did you sort of get down into that micro niche?
It isn't anymore, actually. It started out as a big niche when we were starting our firm and when we were starting in family law. It was right around the time where the marriage equality decisions in Connecticut and nationally were happening. And there wasn't anyone that I knew of in the lead from the family law perspective on helping individual clients. It was more of like, there were tons of people doing tons of advocacy work, tons of legal advocacy work to get those laws passed, to do the work, to get the right cases up and to argue those cases. But I'm talking about like the boots on the ground, like helping individual clients. And at the time, one of the things we were trying to figure out was, how are we going to, now that people in same-sex relationships are able to get married but have been long-term partners for 20 years, how are we going to make those two things work together? And yeah, I'm a divorce lawyer, right? So that's kind of the prenup side that I talked about a minute ago. On the divorce side, we didn't have a concept in Connecticut of the length of the marriage extending to something beyond the literal marriage. So if you have a 20-year relationship and a 1-year marriage, it's like, but that's a 1-year marriage, right? So how do we help clients, the reality of their lives, match what we're kind of dealing with in terms of an evolving section of the law? So I'm married to my partner, Kristen, my law partner, Kristen. And so it was a natural fit for us. And it was a natural interest for us. Happily, and hopefully this will continue to be true, it will continue to be the case that more and more the way our laws and courts, at least in Connecticut, treat folks, married folks or parents, is not skewed by whether or not they're part of the LGBTQ community. So happily, my initial niche has become less relevant. And you know how sometimes you're happy to be out of business on things. I would be very happy to stay out of business on that.
Well, there you go. So let's go back to the firm. So you've got the
Yeah.
two of you. Who else is with you? How many lawyers? How many staff? How have you
Yeah.
sort of built it
There are
up?
about 25 of us total, and I think 12 of us are attorneys. So that's kind of the mix, pushing half and half.
That's a good
Um,
size firm for a family law firm.
yeah,
That's
we're
that's
big,
yeah,
big for family
especially
law. Yeah.
in Connecticut. I mean, you're not a huge state, are you?
No, but
Do you
mighty.
guys go outside? Do you go outside of?
No, we
Okay.
don't. We are Connecticut only, and COVID was a helpful catapult in really becoming a statewide practice. We had Connecticut's very provincial, 169 cities and towns, and I'm not going to even talk about the villages with their own identities in those cities and towns, but we had two offices, I think, when COVID started, and we're sort of functioning in what I would call like the middle of Connecticut. And with COVID, everything changed, and we started doing a lot of mediation when courts shut down to try and help people. We'd always done it, but we ramped it up to try and help people who were a little bit stuck. And we went statewide very quickly, and that has continued since COVID. We never went back. So truly a statewide practice in Connecticut. I think that on a couple of metrics, it's safe to say we're the largest family law firm in Connecticut. And that's, yes. So we've been growing rapidly since 2014 when we niched down to family law.
That's awesome. So you said you went statewide. So
Yeah.
how do you do that? Like, you know, you go from you're in one or two offices and all of a sudden you got to get the word out there, state, they need to know you. So how did you do that?
Yeah, it was COVID. So the internet. It was the marketing. First of all, we had been a firm with remote capabilities. I'm going to toot Ryan McKean's horn, right? So when we started Freed McKean, the tech stack he set us up with at the beginning had always enabled work from home flexibility. So we had, other than a few people, I think pretty much everyone was working a combination of remotely and in the office, but almost all of our client meetings were in the office. So that was the big switch, not our ability to work remotely, but our clients' interest in meeting with us remotely totally changed during COVID. I think that the whole world got a lot more comfortable with Zoom and Teams, et cetera, platforms like that. And then when we came back after COVID, we found that our clients really largely preferred to continue to meet with us virtually. Not all the meetings, obviously, most of court is in person, not all of it, but largely in person. And so our practice, I think, evolved with the world, and we were well set up to do it. How did we get clients? We had a lot of employees back then, not as many as we have now, but say we're kind of maybe a 15-person firm, 5 or 6 lawyers. And I think we just needed to be able to survive and keep paying people. And so we got real creative real fast and started to understand that we could finish cases if we mediated them, even though the courts were closed. And so speaking of niching down, like basically all the marketing went into these virtual mediations that we figured out how to do very quickly. And it's like necessity was the mother of invention there. We just needed to keep the lights on and didn't want to lose our lawyers.
So for the marketing, I mean, are you talking about like SEO, Google ad stuff, or were you, I mean, like what?
I was doing webinars.
Webinars, okay.
Yeah. So we've always had a fairly well, I shouldn't say always, we had to grow it, right? But like our SEO, our native search has always been a big part of our practice and has grown with us. Social media posts, remember, no one had anything to do. So people were on social media much more than they hopefully are now during the day. And so we were able to reach people. This marketing strategy, I don't think would work exactly the same way right now when we were all stuck.
Yeah.
But so yeah, it was a largely webinars, Q&As, Facebook Lives, things like that. And we had a robust presence with all of that previously. And so it was really about switching the focus from divorce in a general way and other family law issues, obviously, and redirecting it into everyone is seeing on the news that the courts are closed, but there's a way that you can resolve your divorce right now and you don't have to stop. So that was what happened back then.
So there was all that talk that, people stuck in the homes together that really put strain on the relationships and maybe
it did.
led to
That's
people
all
actually.
true.
So did you see that?
Oh yeah, it was terrible. It was awful. There were two parts of it that were awful and one part that was good. The awful parts were that the houses became a powder keg. There was nowhere for that tension to go to. People weren't leaving to go to work. Kids weren't leaving to go to school. They were all in the house. It was it ramped up the conflict. The second awful part of it was that there weren't courts there to help resolve it unless there was an emergency situation. So if you think about in family law, there's a big section of things that are urgent but not emergent. And we try to keep them from going there, right? We try to hang out in urgent and not get to emergency. And so the only way you could get in court was with an emergency. And unfortunately, having everyone in the house together was accelerant. That was rough. The good part of it is that it brought things to a head in relationships that would have continued to linger. And I think a lot of people were able to move into a happier situation because things came to a head. They got clarity earlier than they would have in a non-COVID time. One of the things we see in divorce is the frog in the pot of boiling water, right? Doesn't know. And we have a lot of conversations with people where if I were able to share them with you, you would think, oh my gosh, that doesn't make any sense. Why is this person continuing to live like this? And they don't realize, right? They don't realize how far it's drifted. COVID made people realize how far it has drifted quickly. So there was an upside, not that we ever want to go back there.
Those were wild times. Wild times. People just aren't going to believe it,
It's none of it's going to make sense. You were doing what? You were making, right? We didn't even, what's the Spanish flu? None of us had ever heard of it.
Exactly. They just wanted to forget,
Right. I mean, now I look back on it and I'm like, how much bread did I bake? We put it in a wagon, delivered it to neighbors. I mean, it was just, there is no, the living through that time was such a social, cultural, and relationship experiment.
Yeah. Bizarre.
Bizarre.
Real quick, thanks for listening. If you're getting any value out of this podcast, please take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. It would really mean a lot to me. Now back to the show. So you mentioned social media. What's your stack? What's your social media stack? I know you're on LinkedIn because I follow you, but is that your main social media outlet, or do you have others? And maybe you individually
Meghan,
plus the firm.
Yeah, my Meghan LinkedIn is I don't know. I don't know if you feel like this, but I feel like for me right now, where we sit in 2025, I feel like LinkedIn is more interesting to me than a lot of other social media outlets that used to be interesting to me. And LinkedIn used to be completely boring, just job updates. And I mean, it was brutal. It was just,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. Right. I think people went on there once a year when they changed jobs or something like that. But I love it now. I find there to be some tremendous thought leadership. I learn things on it. I've made friendships and relationships through it. So I, that's my personal favorite. For the firm is not really, I mean, it's on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn, the algorithm doesn't love the companies, right? So
That's right.
it's just too bad because Freed Marcroft has a lot of value to add to LinkedIn. It's just that no one sees it. So it has to come out of Meghan Freed on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn, which I'm cool with because I like it. But yes, Facebook, yes, Instagram. I don't think we do Twitter or whatever it's called anymore, but we do have a pretty solid YouTube and even TikTok presence. I'm the one in those videos. I record all those videos, but I don't watch them. I am like not a person who enjoys having the volume on on my devices. I listen to podcasts like yours in the car. It's an auditory thing. It's not, I don't watch. And so it's funny to me that we are having some real success over there in those video driven platforms that I don't naturally watch. And I think that's something that I evolve on as I mature as a law firm owner, that I am not necessarily a person who has the same habits as many of our target clients. And so bringing in folks who are better at different aspects of your firm than you is a really key component. And one of the things that's been great about growing Freed Marcroft is having access to higher and higher caliber of those folks to onboard. Not that we're not perfect at it, we continue to learn, but I have learned a lot. If you had told me 5 years ago, maybe that's not good in TikTok life. If you'd told me 3 years ago when I had heard of TikTok that Freed Marcroft was going to be on it, I would have thought that you were nuts, but I was wrong.
Well, I'm still not on TikTok, but it's interesting the thing about the video. So I was, everybody, you got to do video, got to do videos. I was like, I got to do video, but my clients are lawyers. So I went on LinkedIn and I just said, look, before I spend all this time and money and energy trying to create these videos, do you guys even watch videos? Would you watch a long form video from the lawyer folks?
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly, they're like, I don't watch videos. I'd rather just read it. Or if it's
It's just a lawyer thing?
I don't know. But so it definitely, I think it depends on your audience. Now, they did say if it's a how-to video, like how do you change a tire or how do you do whatever, they're like, I'm going to watch the video to see how
right,
you do
because I need the visual of what thing to twist. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're like, but if you're just explaining a concept, I'd rather just read it. And I was thinking, okay. So then that's when I said, all right, I'm not going to spend too much time on videos, at least not now. But maybe that'll change later.
Maybe I'm just normal. Like maybe I'm normal for a lawyer. I like a transcript. A thing I will do. I will watch a video with with the captioning on and the volume off if I must. Right? If there's nothing to read, I'll do that. But.
That's my mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, or if I see a video that they're like sound up, I'm like, I just save it and then hopefully remember to watch it later.
I know. I can't do the sound up. I'm not in a place where I can put the sound on.
The judge might not like this, but
yeah, I don't think the judge would like that. I don't think my colleague working next door in our open working space needs to hear this. And I've never adapted to always having an AirPods or whatever either. That's not like when I talk on the phone, it is a speakerphone pacing situation. That's how I get my steps in.
Well, it's like now my kids, they got the damn AirPods in all the time.
All the time.
I mean, they're carrying on a conversation with you and there's like one in. I'm like, are you listening?
I know.
Listen
but
to me
also, I don't know any of the cues. Like, I don't know how to mute anything. I really am like, I put them in, I take them out. That is my functionality.
Yeah, so I'm with you about LinkedIn though. I tell people this. I always thought it was a joke, and it used to be. I mean, it really
I
used to
did.
be. It was just boring, and someone convinced me to sort of get on there, and I did, and I get a lot of value out of there, a lot of stuff. For a
Me too.
while, I got that from Twitter, and then
No
Twitter
more.
just the algorithm changed, and I'm still on there because I still see some things that entertain me,
Yeah.
but the quality posts, even they just don't show up in my feed anymore. I was
Yeah.
obsessed with real estate and small business and finance Twitter, and there were so many good people on there. And it's maybe they still are, but they just don't post, or I don't know. They seem to be gone. I've not been able to recreate that
Yeah.
yet,
It
and
did
not
really, there
necessarily on
was a
LinkedIn.
period there where it was great.
So good.
Yeah. But I do think that like the conversation has gone to LinkedIn. And, you are still fighting some boring posts,
Yeah.
right? Where it's
Yeah.
just like, I mean, probably a robot wrote that, but if
Yeah.
you wrote it, you could have just had a robot write it because it's the regurgitation of what everyone's saying. But so it's still, you know, social media. There's still stuff on there that isn't worth your time. But I think that's where the interesting conversations are happening. And I also like them happening. I like lawyer LinkedIn, but I also like the sort of input of the professionals packed around the lawyers too, right? Like whatever is happening on accountant LinkedIn, when it crosses over with the lawyers is really interesting too. So that cross pollination I think has been great. And I've actually tried video on LinkedIn and it's so weird. So I know that it might be moving there. I'm interested in how that shakes out further to your point, but I know they're pushing it, but I don't think the algorithm likes it yet.
We'll
So
see. Yeah, we'll
we'll
see how
see.
that shakes out.
Yeah.
I mean, every platform has its own little personality, and sure,
Hmm.
it's meant to be. They're going to try it. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll
Um,
see.
but speaking of LinkedIn, so I stalked your post for a little while before
Yeah.
this because I always like to do that. And you have some good stuff on there. So anybody out there,
Thanks.
they should follow you first of all. But you had one, and this feeds back, I think, to building a firm, getting clients, keeping them happy, all of that. And you had a post about continually getting client feedback that I thought
Yeah.
was pretty interesting. People have heard of the Net Promoter Score. There are other
Yeah.
ways to survey your clients, but you know, I think a lot of lawyers are scared to do it, number one. And then maybe if they do it, they might just do it once. So maybe
Right.
tell us your philosophy on client feedback.
Yeah. So we do it at stages of the case. So we try to get a pulse of how the client is feeling. And you could do it monthly. That would be a fine, way to do it. We do it at certain key, we have our cases structured into phases so that people understand sort of where they are and where they're going, and our communications to them follow those phases. So there's a natural point at which it makes sense for us to ask how things are going. So one, for example, would be after their initial strategy session, their first like big sit down with their lawyer where we create the first strategy. And then in divorce, discovery is not fun for people. Like even, I'm not even talking, we aren't even at a deposition yet. I'm talking about gathering 3 years of bank statements and tax returns and what the heck I live with them and why, like, whatever. It's frustrating for folks. I get it that it's frustrating. So I like to know how they're doing. And what I like to know is both a 30,000 foot view of how we're doing and a micro view of how we're doing. I want to know, are there things that we could be en masse for all of our clients doing better in a way that gives them a better experience? Can we learn from people's pain points? I also want to make sure, of course, that individual clients are fine. And there's two sides to that, right? One is, are we, Freed Marcroft, living up to our commitments to clients who aren't going to find what we deliver valuable? And the earlier we identify that before someone's really upset or things are really dissident, the easier it is to either course correct and get back on the same page, explain what they were confused about, etc., or help them smoothly transition to a firm that might work in a more traditional way, or whatever their concept is of how they want it, their relationship with their lawyer to look. So it's a two-way street. It's one, what can we learn about this individual client and how to help them better? But also, one of those ways that we might be able to help them better is by not being the ones who are helping them. And that was hard for our lawyers at the beginning. It's scary to have people rate you. And it is true that people are more candid with a number from a question that feels neutral and not like you're pointing a finger at your paralegal, right? Then actually telling your lawyer you're concerned about something, or you didn't understand something, or why she said something. So it does get a lot. We used to ask, but we get a lot more information. People seem to be comfortable with the NPS. There is all sorts of follow-up discussion depending on how they score us, right? Then they're interacting with humans about it. But the initial gut take, we're much better at finding out when someone is concerned, unhappy, thrilled. It's much easier for us to find that out through a kind of objective rating system.
I think it's a great point you brought
it.
up too. If you do it early and often, it does give you the ability to course correct or cut ties and hopefully avoid the pissed off review or bar complaint or whatever that might come if you don't do it soon enough and you wait till the end and they're like, I've been pissed this whole time.
Yeah. And we really wish we had known, right? And so, I could tilt at windmills and be aggravated that people don't tell us when there's something they don't like, or I can find out a different way to ask and use it to ask them, right? That's one of the things I think that it's understandable for lawyers to be frustrated when clients don't share that information. But the truth is that there are people who are intimidated by their lawyers, by any lawyer. They don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation. They don't feel like going through the pain of changing firms. They like someone individually and don't want to hurt their feelings. There's all sorts of stuff packed into it. So fine, let's let humans be humans and just figure out a way to ask them that people are more comfortable with.
So this is really interesting to me. So some of the logistics, let's talk about that. So you sort of touched on it, but how do you roll this out to your team and say that we're about to do this, guys, watch out? I mean, how do you get them on board or basically tell them it's going to happen? And then the sort of follow up is, what's the response been from both internally and then from your clients?
Yeah. So two things happened. We did a big retreat and sort of retooled some of our core values. Our purpose is happiness matters. Our core values relate to happiness matters, and several of them relate to the concept of being a truth teller, and several of them relate to doing whatever it takes to give people the best experience possible. And so we explained that in order for happiness to matter, we need to know if there is a happiness. And so we're going to start measuring happiness. And we also explained what I shared with you, that this is a three-way thing, right? One is we're going to figure out how we can do better to not have clients experience stress, right? It's divorce, there's going to be stress, but on our end, right? Owning our full 100%. How can we deliver the best, smoothest experience possible? But also, we are going to identify when there's likely to be a future problem with a client, hopefully before it gets to an urgent state, when it's just a low-grade thing, and course correct. So we explained why we were doing it. And I think because we took the time in a full day to go through that it went well. I will tell you that not everyone is with the firm now that was with the firm when we launched it. And I think that I'm not shocked by that. And I'm sure that there were other reasons involved, but I think that NPS worked that way too. That
Interesting.
if the goal is to have the right people in the right seats at the right time, some folks opted out. And so that was, or we opted them out. It worked both ways, right? And I think that was a tremendous benefit of it too. And now our team, it's just part of our culture. So it's like, it's part of the gig now, and people embrace it. One of the things that is an idiosyncrasy, maybe just of our NPS platform, is that we can't, sometimes people hit a 0 when they mean a 10, or a 1 when they mean a 10, whatever the lowest is. They hit the lowest when they mean the highest. And when we ask them, oh, geez, we're so sorry that, we're not living up to what we had committed to, often they're mortified that they hit the wrong number, right? Well, that conversation is a great conversation too. I love that. And so everyone knows to not get, we have a standard that is our standard that everyone has to meet or exceed. Right now, we're exceeding it. And I think that there's room in the standard for someone to hit the wrong number. There's room in the standard for someone who's not a good fit to work with us, or we're not a good fit to work with. So it's like, not as scary once it launches, but I do think you have to be really careful about how you do it so that people know that it's not just like, it's not designed to be a tool where an individual is hanging on their own. It's designed to be a tool that we all use together to improve.
Great point. And, change is always scary, and something like that where you might feel exposed can be even scarier.
Yeah.
So I want to be respectful of your time. There's so much more that we could cover, but I want to make sure I ask this question because I'm very interested in this. So, and maybe I will get this characterization wrong. So you tell me if I'm wrong, but
Okay.
I feel like you started out as, I'll call it almost like an accidental law firm owner. It wasn't something you were thinking
fair.
about. And you've grown this to the largest family law firm in Connecticut. So you've done a lot. As you look forward to the future, what's left to do? What are you looking into the future? What's your vision for the future, whether it be firm wise or personal or whatever?
Yeah, we're not done over here. So one of the things, we run scaling up in our law firm, and we were at a leadership team scaling up meeting, our last for Q3 planning. And I said, I'm sick of this problem. I want to have a new problem. So I think that's interesting at this particular stage of growth. It's like, I see so many things that I want to get the opportunity to really dial in. And in order to do that, I have to let go of some of the things that aren't 100% dialed in yet. And when I think of the future, it's like I want a better, even more pristine version of what we're doing now that impacts who we're serving even better and serves more people to that level. I don't particularly want to do that while taking up the problem opportunity of expanding to a different state. I know, like a lot of other law firms that are sort of at our general size, that's kind of one of the things that they're interested in, opening up another practice area, expanding out of their home state or their home county in larger states than Connecticut. And that's just not presently where we sit today. What rings my bells? I think we can do what we're doing right now for a lot more people even better right here where we are. And I'm interested in that. So that's what's ringing my bells right now. Like, how do we make this thing great? And then maybe when we're talking in 2 years, I'm like, we did that, and now I'm going to New York. I don't know.
I love it. I love it. I think that's a good vision to have. So, Meghan, thanks for coming on.
My
This has been
pleasure.
great. This is really some good stuff you've dropped for us today. So, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I really am on LinkedIn constantly, so LinkedIn would be great. But also, I'm available. My email address is my first name, Megan, which my parents snuck an H into. At Freed Marcroft is my email. And then we are basically everywhere online if you would like to reach out. I am very open and love other lawyers, so I'd love to chat.
And again, if you're not following Megan on LinkedIn, go do it. She's got some good posts. So I've enjoyed them. So Megan, again, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn and check out the show notes with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion by visiting www.lawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.